are live at the Bridget Mabandla Justice College for day 17 as the Madlanga Commission of Inquiry continues. The body of South Africa's law enforcement complex taking a number of blows yesterday, but right through, clearly threaded and boldly stated, were the heart of South Africa's police officers who say that they will stay the course despite the threat to their lives and their livelihoods. Ziyanda Ngobo is going to wrap some of the highlights of that key testimony from witness A yesterday, and boy, was it a nail-biter. Ziyanda?
That's right, and it ended off on quite a somber, sullen note from witness A, who concluded their second day of testimony here at the Madlanga Commission. The morning started off with a reflection on how the arrest of Katiso Katie Molefe came to being, the drama that unfolded at Molefe's Sandhurst home when there were two teams now that were waged in a standoff between each other. That's the Hawks that eventually arrived, and what witness A describes as an interception and interference of their operation. They found documents, tender documents related to Transnet and the SK Group, which is directly linked to that Q-Tech tender that Aman Swart was ultimately mistakenly murdered for. The afternoon then saw a lot of discussion around the role players who became very interested in the investigations that the witness A and his team, including the political killings task team, were undertaking. In fact, the speed with which and the nature of the investigation got the attention of someone like the Deputy National Police Commissioner, Eldred de Klerk, who we're told by witness A was questioning why Katiso Katie Molefe, once that volatile situation had ended, was not taken to a local police station and was instead taken to Pretoria Central.
He told me that what I did was not nice. General Sibia is not happy. And then he said I must be careful that I won't face a civil claim about what I did. And I didn't understand what he was saying, because we've been doing this for a long time since I've been a police. It is the team or a detective who decide where they arrest a person, where they detain a person rather.
Witness A, the General Sibia you are referring to in paragraph 91 of your statement. Can you just explain who that is?
General Sibia will be National Deputy Commissioner, who is also the head of detectives nationally.
So that was a reflection by witness A of a conversation that they had had with Major General Richard Shibiri, who is the head of organized crime, someone who was actually hired by Eldred Sibia, but was also consistently, according to witness A, trying to warn them and get the team to back off from continuing with investigations into the Aman Swart murder and citing the influence that Katiso Katie Molefe had across the spectrum in the criminal justice system. In fact, later on in the afternoon, witness A then reflected and made some damning allegations against the judiciary. In particular, witness A spoke about the first time Katiso Katie Molefe was granted bail in the Aman Swart murder. Now, this is at a time when he was granted 100,000 rand bail, and witness A reflecting on how they believed that the presiding officer did not consider factors like the fact that Katie Molefe has previously used fake documents to enter and exit South Africa and even go to the United Kingdom, and that even though this was 20 years ago, the nature
All right, we lost Ziyanda's We lost the Zianda's narration there, but let me pick up on that thread of Katie Molefe. And if you were listening to that testimony yesterday, you'll talk about these repeated bail securing attempts denied in the Alexandra Magistrates Court. That matter then going to the South Gauteng High Court, where he then was granted bail of 400,000 rand. And the judge in that matter saying that the reasons for the bail denial in the first place were unsubstantiated. That judge will now, having been named in these proceedings, will likely have to give an answer of his own. And this is Judge Brad Wanless, who then said the bail denial was unsubstantiated. But it would also be important to see the evidence that would be proffered with regard to witness A's testimony to back up very strongly what he was saying. I want to bring in Eldred de Klerk to look at some of the themes that were emerging overnight and yesterday in witness A's testimony. A lot of moments of concern, Eldred, and let's pick up with what Zianda reminded us about, and that was this, what would have been and what was described to have been a dramatic standoff between two very important law enforcement units.
Absolutely. And good morning, Iman. It seems, though, that it's not just the standoff between units, but also the nature of the people who the units account to. If they are there under the instruction of their commander to say, go and, to quote, interfere, that speaks volumes to back the claim that there is huge tensions within the South African Police Service and that some units are working against, or seemingly, or some commanders at the very least, are working against the interest of justice and due process. So it puts the members who we put against each other from the different units under a lot of stress and duress because they are often of similar rank, they're trying to pursue the same ends, they're simply trying to do their job, and yet they are commanded and put in a space where they could clash with fellow officers. So that speaks to the toxic nature of what the very commission and the ad hoc committee has to address.
And he named in that moment as well, receiving calls from Major General Richard Shibiri, who already now is connected with the brown envelope saga that we were told about at the commission. But also with regard to this particular arrest, almost like a warning is the way that he would have described it. And then also enter Lieutenant General Shadrach Sibia in questioning where Katie Molefe was taken, and again being an involved player in this particular arrest, to the point that you're making these orders and instructions wouldn't come from somewhere. And if it indeed is, as witness A has told us, there's certainly a lot that we have to be concerned about. I want to, perhaps if we can, look at, before we move to what's happening in the ad hoc committee, if there is time, look at the fact that there are a number of names that are emerging through these testimonies. We've had witness A now. We're going to have B and C, also detectives, also people who are involved in active operations of police, who will potentially pick up the baton from witness A and tell us more about various accounts of involvement and interference. But we are going to be dealing with, or at least the Madlanga Commission will, with a lot of different witnesses. Eldred, how do you see all of this being managed from an evidentiary point of view? I mean, of course, not everyone's going to be asked to come and testify, but the Commission will be dealing with scores of people.
Absolutely. And scores of people is going to put their hands up and say, I want to come and tell my story. And for some of them, that may not be the best move because we are seeing just the grueling nature of these inquiries. We also see that you have to become prepared, and any inconsistency undermines your credibility. And what we saw were operational officers who were telling the story because they lived the story. They weren't trying to account a testimony that they thought we wanted to hear. They were simply given the opportunity to account and recount what they had gone through, how they experienced their work, and the kind of interference and pressure that was seemingly put on them by senior officers. That takes time. And if we see anybody in that, now the concern is much like the TRC, when you account something that basically has the risk of traumatizing you, of recalling and recounting emotions and pressure that you felt, witnesses would have to be able to be, one, take a break, two, be able to be briefed and debriefed throughout that experience, in addition to being prepared. But it also speaks to them and how they get support when they're actually on the job, because the nature of the job makes them vulnerable, and it's unfair on them if that vulnerability and pressure is increased and magnified because they are getting pressure from commanders, undue pressure from commanders to act in a particular way or make decisions that they themselves wouldn't otherwise take. So the Commission now consider
Which
the
brings me, I
length
think
of
it's a perfect lead in to what I want to follow up on.
Sorry, go ahead, Iman.
Oh, sorry, Eldred. I'm just going to blame technology there and the delays in our signals, because I thought that you had stopped, so I apologize. But you allow me the opportunity to bring in then two themes which I think are quite important. The fact that the witnesses who are testifying are in safe houses, they've been in safe houses for a while. Their commanders know exactly who they are. And so our question as the public, especially given that emotional sort of ending to yesterday where he was saying, despite whatever happens and all of these threats against me, I am going to carry on doing the job that I need to do in memory of all of those who have died for this cause and the families who need answers till today. What would the Commission, but I think it's more of a SAPS capability, what would they have to do to ensure that indeed all of these witnesses and their families are kept safe? We do not need one person going down in a hail of bullets for this process. It might damage the process.
Absolutely. And the Commission is obviously working with the judiciary, who is responsible for protecting witnesses and ensuring that they are safe and that their families, by extension, are safe, because they are vulnerable when they feel that those they love and care about and are significant to them can actually be used to hurt them too. So the Commission has that responsibility, the judiciary has that responsibility, but there's also a responsibility on the South African Police Service leadership and on the leadership of the NPA to ensure that those officers who's named and implicated are also put on special leave, because that now seems to be a thing that even if they wasn't there before, we all now know that you could go on special leave, but that they are warned, that they put on leave and said that they can't interfere with witnesses. And if it's found that they that they interfere with witnesses, obviously they make themselves guilty of a criminal offense. So there's responsibility across the leadership of these institutions and maybe even on Parliament to say we need to use this moment to ensure that we deal with this once and for all, which means it's all hands on decks and everybody takes their respective responsibilities to ensure that we get to hear the full story. Those telling us the full story can do so free of fear and duress, and that they get the necessary support, and that we make sure that those who are in a position to influence the process cannot do so in any way.
Maybe obscure, but I'm thinking of Maya Angelou's quote, which says, have the courage to love one more time, and then one more time. And for our South African purposes, is have the courage to trust who we are as a nation one more time, and one more time. And hopefully, as you say, this is a moment to correct and change the way that things have been operating going forward. On that note, Eldred de Klerk, we'll talk later. A touch